So you're going to watch me show you how to mud and tape drywall. It's a process I've been using for right around 20 years or so when I first learned how to do drywall. I've done it for a living in the past, combined with a lot of stuff, so I didn't just specialize in drywall, but I picked up a lot. And I want to show you guys how it's done. You might be watching this because you actually want to know how to do drywall and you're going to try it. Or maybe you're going to watch just because you think it's interesting to watch me work. Or maybe you like watching my channel, so hey, why not watch Corey do drywall? Either way, you're going to learn something here. So let me just start with the basics, because drywall is a process, just like anything. Painting a car is a process. Follow the process, you'll get good results. Cutting and buffing a car is a process. Follow the process, get good results. Growing microgreens, you guys have seen that on my channel. So the thing I want to talk about a little bit, just briefly, is hanging drywall. Because hanging drywall is every bit as important to the end result as actually mudding and taping. So what's critical about drywall is planning out your layout. You want to have your drywall go in a certain way, okay? So sometimes it might be the direction that you're going to run your ceiling. Sometimes that might be planned out because of where you're going to place joints, specifically the butt joints. The flats are easy to hide. Butt joints like this one here can be difficult to hide. There's a reason why this butt joint is here and not at that end of the wall. The reason is that it's in a corner. It's easy to hide it. So the butt joints will be mounted up a little bit, but you'll feather it out to like almost 2.5, almost 3 feet. So here you can see that I hid my butt joint in this corner. There's one at the other end, at the bottom over here. It's down low, where you're not gonna see it. Light from the window isn't gonna hit that joint. Like this joint is in the corner, so you won't see that one. The other big thing, factory joints. They're factory joints for a reason. They're made to come together. Don't cut sheets and then take a factory edge and then take a cut edge to it, because you're going to have it raised. The factory joint is inset a little bit. It's dented in, I guess you'd call it. And it's designed so that after you get your tape on here and then you mud it, it'll be perfectly flat. It's not raised at all like a butt joint is. Other big point, when you're screwing in your sheetrock, there's little X's here that I use as guides for where my studs are. Some people put lines on, that's all good. I've had great luck with being able to follow these little marks, knowing that I can see my stud here, so I know that that's lined up with this mark here, and then I follow the marks. For walls, you only need 4 screws per stud. So you've got those X's, there's a mark here, there's one at each end. For the ceiling, you do 5. So there's one extra mark right here in the center. There might be differences of opinion on that and how you do it, but that's how I do it. When you're putting in your screws, try to use the proper tools. I have a professional drywall gun. It works great to set the screws. Not everybody has that. Not everybody's going to want to buy that because you might be doing a small project. You're not going to be doing it for long. I haven't been in the business for, probably 12, 13 years, but I still have tools. And luckily, because I'm doing renovation on my house all the time. You want your screws to be set so that they're below the surface of paper, but not tearing the paper. If you tear the paper, you're going to have to put another screw in right next to it, because if you don't, that screw is going to pop. And you've seen this before in drywall. There'll be a little circle, this drywall mud kind of sticking up a little bit, or it's sunk in. That's because you tore the paper when you put the screw in. So I don't want to go off too much on a tangent talking about hanging drywall, but these are important things, and you're going to see that the way I approach this is a very strict process. It works the way I do it. So let's get into the tools, all right? In my pocket here, I have a number 2 Phillips screwdriver. I keep that in my pocket the whole time I'm doing this mud and taping thing, or at least when I'm taping. After I'm done taping and the screw heads are coated, you don't need to carry it around anymore. But that's because no matter how much due diligence you did trying to make sure that all your screws are perfect when you're putting it up, you're going to find a couple that are maybe The screw head's not sunk enough. And so you keep this with you just so you can give everything a little bit of a tweak and just set it in, because you don't want anything high, because it's going to stick out, it's going to catch your knife, it's going to look bad. Keep the screwdriver with you. The other thing you're going to want, utility knife. The reason you're going to want the utility knife is you're going to find those spots in the drywall where maybe on a butt joint like this, there's like a little bit of a piece kind of flared out. You can trim that off just really lightly, kind of give it a shave so that the tape can fit nice and flat onto the surface here. The idea is everything to be flat. You don't want anything sticking out. Keep the knife with you. There'll be spots you have to cut out. You're going to want it. The other thing is tape and a tape reel. Tape reels are cheap. You're going to want it. Trust me. You hang this thing on your belt, makes everything so much easier, and you don't have to be trying to reach for tape and unreel it and everything. It's right here. I'll show you how all that works. It's easy. Tape. Use paper tape. Don't use that mesh crap that self-sticks on and then you coat over it. It's faster, it's inexpensive, but it's garbage, in my opinion, okay? There might be people that say, hey, that mesh tape, I love that stuff. It's garbage, okay? So, you're going to want a tape reel, and you're going to want tape. I'm going to show you a little bit more about the tape in a minute. You will need, this is called a hock. This is what your mud's going to go on. You're not going to be using some bread pan that you've seen other people use. They're a mess. They're not easy to use. And I've got to let my cat out. He's meowing at me. Sorry. Little break there. So this is called a hock. This is what your mud's going to be sitting on. You're going to learn a little bit about balance because you don't want, the mud sliding off. But you're going to learn right away, if you've ever used the bread pan method, why this is so far superior. The bread pan method is messy. It's hard to keep fresh mud on here or in the bread pan because you're always putting it in and it's getting kind of smeared all over the place. I won't use one. You can use one if you want. I use a hock. That's stainless steel. All my stuff's stainless steel. You can use plastic tools if you want. You can use whatever you want. I have stainless because I used to do this for a living, and it lasts forever. I've had this stuff for, I don't even know what I said, like 15 years or so, maybe more. 6-inch knife. 6-inch knives, that's what you're going to use when you're putting on your tape. You're going to use it for coating screw heads, and you're going to use it for coating your corners. You're also going to use it on the first coat of corner bead, which I probably won't get into on this video because I'm not using corner bead on this project. I'm going to be using a special plastic backed tape. I'll show you that when I get to it. 10-inch knife. You're going to want a 10-inch knife for your first top coat of your flats. You're going to want it for basically that, and also for your second coat on your corner bead if you were using corner bead. 12-inch knife. This knife is used for your butt joints. So some people will use it for a final coat on their flats. I don't see the need. The factory edge that's indented is only about 6 inches wide. So if you find yourself having to feather out your flats, you did your flats wrong. So I use it for the butt joints. There'll be one coat straight down the middle, and when that dries, there'll be another one on each side of that. And then when that's done, I'll use this again, and I'll pull a tight coat over the entire butt joint, and that'll be it. All right, took off that white sweatshirt. You didn't really think I was going to work in that, did you? Got my hock, got my 6-inch knife, got my tape on. About to start mudding. Just gonna scoop out some mud here for joint compound, if you want to be technical. I like to call it mud. Sounds more fun to me, playing with the mud. So the very first thing I do is butt joints, and I hit all the butt joints everywhere. By the time I get back to my first one, hopefully it's dry and I can start my flats. I don't like to cross wet tape if I can avoid it. So what I'm going to do here is my 6-inch knife has a nice metal end on it. I will usually run that into the joint of the butt joint to just kind of create a little bit of a groove there. Try to flatten it out. Like I said before, you could use your knife to do that. You know, the utility knife, but this works just fine. Gonna get a little bit of mud on my knife. Start top, and feather it down. It's all about angle and pressure. You don't have to have a ton of pressure if you have the right angle on your knife. Hopefully you're able to see that a little bit. It doesn't have to be pretty. Just smear it on there, get a nice coat. The end of my tape here is a little bit messed up, so I'm going to go ahead. This is how I cut my tape. Just put your knife over it nice and square, press on it, and just tear it. You get a nice clean cut. Now what I want to show you about the tape. Tape is designed to bend one way. You can tell, like it won't bend really the other way, but there's a crease right down the middle of it. And so you want that crease to be down so that it can bend in to your joint. That's a flat, so it doesn't really go into the joint, but you still want the crease to be pointed into the center of that joint. So if it was to shrink up, it goes in and it doesn't protrude out. Like I said, flatness is everything in drywall. So we're going to go ahead, put it all the way up to the ceiling. Doesn't have to be totally tight because there's another tape joint that's going to be going up there. Down here at the bottom, it's going to go like that. Cut it off. I usually will do this, especially if it's going to take me a minute, and just clean off any mud that was on the tape from where it just was on the bottom there. I'm going to put one finger at the top, and I'm going to squeegee it out. I'm going to go down both sides, pulling semi-tight. You don't want to go too tight. If you accidentally push too hard and you pull all the mud out of the joint, out from behind the tape's going to bubble out and it's going to be a mess. That's probably one of like the tricks of the trade, is how much mud or how much pressure you put on the knife, because if you, like I said, if you pull it too tight, you're going to pull out all the mud and the tape won't have anything to stick to. That's all there is for taping a butt joint. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to tape all the joints in this room, and when I come back, we will do this flat, and I'll show you what that's all about. It's very similar, same thing, couple little things I'm going to show you. Alright, the butt joints are not as dry as I'd really like, because this area I'm working in isn't really that big, so I didn't really have time to wait, or it didn't take as long to do all the butt joints as I would have liked. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this flat, show you guys what that's all about. Same steps as the butt joint, but there's one critical little factor I want to show you after I do the taping. I'm actually going to try to tape backwards. Naturally, for some reason, I want to go in this direction, but for the video, I'm going to pull in this direction so you can actually see what I'm doing. So, same process. Get some mud on your knife there. I know some of that's probably cut out of the video, but the idea is to get it nice and coated real well. I know I'm probably a little bit slower, if you guys are are watching this and you're like, hey, I've done professional drywall and that guy, he's slow or whatever. Well, yeah, I mean, I am. I don't do this all the time. I do it for myself. Sometimes I'll do it to help out other people, but I try not to. I've got a good job and I'm pretty busy, but so same thing as before. Use it. Make sure your tape where it wants to fold into the joint. Go ahead and stick it on one end. Try to keep that crease in the center of your joint. So if you get a good start, you can kind of pull out a whole lot at once. Just kind of stick it on there. Clean off the end of the tape. All right. One thing I didn't show before when I was doing the butt joint, but it's something I do a lot. You know, normally you have the hock in your hands, so your hands are full. I put my finger up at the top. You couldn't see it in the video, but I had my finger up at the top, held the tape, and then squeegeed it out. Well, you can use a corner of your hock to do that as well. I just press it on, you know, like on the tape at the end, and I squeegee it out, and that's what I'm going to do at this end that I think is slightly out of the video shot here, but I want to tell you that's what I'm doing. So I don't have to actually set the hock down. Clean off that mud a little bit. So once you have a little bit stuck down like I just did, you don't have to keep holding the tape. It will stay the rest of the way all on its own. Again, with practice, you want to make sure that you press the tape down enough, but not too much. You don't want to squeegee out all the mud. You want to leave some there. And you don't want to keep splatting it all over yourself like I'm doing. So I went right down the middle. Now I'm going to go down each side. So that the middle of the knife, or the edge of the knife, is still on the tape. I'm just cleaning up the edge. And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want any mud holding up my next coat. At the end of the day, we're only trying to fill this void here and cover up this joint. We don't want any mud sticking up high. The way you can tell if you did a good job, if you're you got your tape tight enough, is you can hold up your knife. You probably can't see that in the video, maybe you can, but I'll hold the knife straight over the joint, and you should be able to see light all the way across that. Your tape should not be touching the edge of your knife. I don't check that because I you know, typically I know I got it right, but that's just an indicator for you guys to know, did you get that tight enough? Like I said, keep everything nice and flat, nothing sticking out. That's good. So I'm gonna do the rest of these joints, and that might be it for me tonight, because I've got a bunch of microgreens I gotta harvest up. I got, you know, spend some time with the family, but I'm gonna do the tomorrow when I get home from work. I'll do all the corners. I'll show you that, and then we'll also go and put first coats over the butt joints. And yeah, I'm gonna continue the video though. I'm not going to just do a little bit at a time, but this video is gonna take me like 3 or 4 days to make it, and then I'll show the whole video at once, so you're not left hanging. But that concludes this for now. See you soon. All right, let's tape a corner. It's basically the same as the flats, the butt joint, but it's a corner instead. So what you're gonna want to do is I load one side of the knife. I'll just run that right down the corner. Then I'll come around and I'll do the other side. And you want to angle your knife a little bit, because if you keep it too straight, you'll be digging out the other side of the corner that you just put on. Like that. Make sure you're getting a nice, everything covered. Don't leave any holes, because that'll cause a bubble when you tape. For the corners, when I can, I like to cut my tape at once. For really long corners or whatever, I'll do a section and I'll just keep going. I won't cut the tape in between. So what I'll do is I'll just set the tape up like that, bring it down, follow it to about where I want to be. So now I get the right piece, the right length. Cut it. Like I said earlier, you had that crease. The tape wants to fold one direction. I'll go through and I'll fold it all. So now you get this nice corner piece. Get it all set in there. I'll use my hawk sometimes, like I did before, to kind of hold it in place for just a second. Be careful that you don't point the edge of the knife, the corner of the knife, too much into the corner, because you'll cut the tape. And if you cut the tape, then it was kind of no point in putting tape on, because you're going to leave a crack. Make sure you don't leave a ridge at the edge of the tape or the edge of your mud, because that ridge is going to come back to haunt you. I'll show you when I go to coat the corners for final coats why you don't want a ridge, because you have to sand it. And so ideally you're going to want everything to be smooth. You don't want anything raised. Kind of like I was talking about before, about how you want everything to be flat, nothing sticking up, everything smooth as possible. Pretty much all there is to it. That's a corner. So while I'm here, I'm going to show you screw heads, which is stupid simple. The screw head, you put the mud on one way like that, and then just come off an opposite way and pull it off. Like that. So it doesn't have to be exactly opposite, just a different direction. And what I do sometimes for I'll show you just up here real quick. So if you got a string of them, you know, you got a bunch of them together, you can kind of link them. Hit them all at once like that, and come back this way. And hit them all. You can see right here, I found a screw head. It's not set enough. That's why you're supposed to keep your screwdriver in your pocket, not on the floor like I just did. So we'll just fill that. So that's screw heads. Screw heads get 3 coats. So that mud's going to shrink, and they'll get hit 2 more times. And I probably won't even show those again, because that's just so simple. But with the corners, I'll go ahead and hit all my vertical corners all the way around, and then I'll come back to my original corner, and it should be dry enough, and I will start my ceiling corner and go all the way around and finish up here. There's not a lot to it, but it is one of those things you kind of gain a knack for. The order in which you do it probably doesn't matter. You could probably do ceiling corners first, and then do your verticals, but it's the process that I've been following, the way I do it. So I'm going to finish up those corners. Next thing I'll be doing is putting the first coat on top of the butt joints. So see you back when I get the corners all done. One quick tip I thought was worthy of showing you guys is that if you've got outside corners, this is a 45 corner, wraps around, so it doesn't matter if it's a 90-degree corner or what it is. But when you're taping the ceiling joint, I always go a little bit by the corner, and I just cut at a little bit of an angle of the tape, and I roll it over. And then when I go and I do the other direction, I'll do the same thing on the other side, and that prevents there being any sort of a hole here that can kind of crack. And it's something I've always done, and I wanted to just share that with you guys. So now I'm going to tackle these 45-degree corners, and I was telling you I have a special tape for that. It's a tape that's got a plastic backing on it, and I've used it plenty of times, especially on inside corners that are not 90s. So especially in the case of a second story of a building, sometimes you have the roof lines kind of come in. You have like a gambrel, I think is how you say it, and so you have a corner here that's not a 90, and then you have one up here. And if you're using regular tape, it can be really difficult to get a nice straight line across that. This stuff makes it perfect every time. Really easy to use. Directions are right on the back of how to use it. I'm going to use scissors to cut this stuff up. You could use a knife, but scissors are just going to be easier for me. So yeah, you can see like what I was saying about I don't know how well you can see that, but like I was saying about the second stories, a lot of times you have these odd angles. Stuff works awesome for that. So I'm going to cut a piece up. I'm going to get the mud up here. I'll start recording again after I do that. So I've got the joint all mudded up. Like I said, make sure you go and put a whole lot of mud up there. Don't be shy. You really want to make sure that this stuff has a nice base to stick to. The top of it shows you right in the directions to do this. You want to make it sort of a point, and the reason you do that is because the corners of this stuff could create an edge that could peel up, and once that starts, it could start coming off. The other reason is if you have multiple corners coming in, that's the other reason to do it, but it's a good idea to do that. So to put it on, it's easy. I also pre-folded this stuff in half, and just fold it in half and ran my hand across it. Make sure you get the right side out. It's kind of obvious, but so you want to go ahead and start placing it on. Press kind of firmly to make sure you have it all the way in. You don't want it sticking out at all. You want to make sure that your two walls are actually coming together where you want them to, and you don't place this point like off to the side one way or the other. And you're going to just take your knife, and just like regular tape, squeegee it on out. You'll move a little bit as you do one side to the other. You'll feel it kind of shift in position, but that's all part of getting it exactly where you want it. that's really all there is to it. Just like that, you end up with a perfect outside corner. You can use corner bead to do this as well, but I really like this stuff. It's really easy to use. This is only going to take probably one coat of mud over this to make it perfect. I might take and do another 2 coats on it. I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes, but it's been a while since I've used it. They changed the design a little bit since the last time I used it as well. This actually looks like it's easier to coat than the other stuff I used to use. So we'll see how it goes. You know, you can always add coats. You know, you don't have to get everything perfect the first time. If you think things shrunk up and you want to add another coat, nice tight skim coat, go ahead and do it. It's going to save you a lot of trouble when you go to sand it and everything else. So that's it, guys. Next, we're going to hit the butt joints. All right? All right. So for those of you still watching, which if you are, I'm impressed that you lasted almost a half hour of listening to me talk about drywall and mud. But hey, you're still with me? I'm going to keep going. So now it's time for the 12-inch knife. Going to coat this butt joint, show you how it's done. None of this is rocket science. None of it is difficult. But I think it's helpful if you get to see, you know, somebody show you how they do it, and makes it easier for you to approach it. So I'm going to go ahead and start coating this. So I put a good amount on my knife. And I run right down the center of that tape. You want a nice even coat all the way across the edge of the knife. So from edge to edge, so it should be about a 12-inch wide coat. Then I'm going to take the edge of my knife and I'm going to kind of curl it just to get you a good view in the video, like that, as I go down this edge. And I'm just going to knock off the edge. I'm going to do that again on this side. And I didn't get this side too good the first time. Do it again. And that's it. So you can see there's still a ridge here, but I've got another coat that's going to go all the way over here, and another coat that's going to go all the way over here. On this coat, the biggest thing you're trying to do is get a nice base and cover the tape. You want to be basically almost seeing the tape through the mud, but I mean, you want to have it covered though. And then as you do your next coats, you'll get a better base on there. So that's it for butt joints. I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of them. Notice I say go ahead a lot, but yeah, and then we'll get to the flats and also the first coat on the corners. Corners are one side at a time, all the way around, and then when that's dry, you go back and do the other. But so that's it, guys. Thanks for sticking with me. As you're using up your bucket of mud, it's a good idea to scrape down the edges and keep it so it's nice and flat. Otherwise, you'll get dried up pieces, and those pieces will then end up in the rest of your mud, and then when you're doing skim coats and such, you'll drag all those chunks through, and you'll have a really hard time getting a nice smooth coat. So what I do is I just drag my knife around like that. Just kind of keep it nice and smooth like that. Sorry, it's extremely difficult to do this while holding a camera at the same time. But yep, you get the idea. So that's just a small thing. It's a really good idea to do that, especially if you're done for the day. And yeah. All right, well, let's get these flats coated up. And after that, I'll be doing one side of all the corners. And just wanted to show you this. It's super easy. It's not exactly difficult. All you're trying to do here is fill that factory void. It's helpful if you go in both directions. Same thing as with the butt joint. I curve my knife and get the edge like that. And try not to fall too down into the groove because you'll be pulling the mud out of there that you don't want to pull out. And going in both directions helps knock out air bubbles. And this will be getting one more coat after this. So like I said, there's not a lot to it. It's all pretty simple. It's helpful if you don't already have outlets in the way, but you know, I live here, so we have to use this place still, so. There's a lot more, you know, small things, tips and stuff that I know I could be sharing. This video's, you know, long enough as it is, and this is some little things, you know, like one of those little things might be to mix your mud. If you're doing a big job, I don't usually bother on a small job like this, but you know, they make a special whip for mixing mud with a drill, and a tip would be you can actually mix in a little bit of dish soap into that mud, and it helps everything glide better, everything from the taping down to your final coat. And so that works really nice. That's it. All right, let's get the first side of this corner coated, and I'll show you a little trick afterwards about how you can coat all three corners where they meet and not run into each other. But for starters, I'll just get this coat on. What you're going to be doing is put on a nice even heavy coat, and when you're all done, you want to have a nice feathered edge, and you want to have just about between a 1/16 and an 1/8 of an inch of mud covering the tape. So you want to go all the way up to the top of the corner. Make sure you don't leave any voids. And then what I do is I take my knife, and just like on the edges of the butt joint and the flats, I kind of curve it and create that nice feathered edge. The whole idea behind that and behind everything on this is limit sanding. You don't want to have to sand much, so eliminate your edges. And just come down. And I actually messed up a little bit. I pulled that a little bit too tight. I can see a little bit more tape than I would like. So I'm just going to go back and add just a little bit of mud to it. There we go. That's nice smooth corner. And then I'll take the extra time, and anywhere that I kind of got a little bit of mud on the edge, I'll just take my knife and on the other side, I'll clean that off. That'll make it easier for when I do my second coat. I won't have to be, you know, running into chunks all over the place. So yeah, I'll carry that down the rest of the way. Some of that's cut off the camera anyway, so there's no point in showing you that. And then I'll do this corner here, this way, and then this one here, this way. And I'll show you what that looks like up here and why I did that pattern. And it's kind of important, but like all of this, nothing is like written in stone. You don't have to do these things this way, but it all makes it easier if you follow a certain process all the way to the end. Alright, so let me finish that up. Alright guys, so what I want to show you is how I bring the three corners together and the reasons why I do it this way. In this case, there's actually a reason why I picked the first corner that I did, and that's because I was already thinking about my pattern. So what you do is you don't ever do like the same corner on the same wall. So I brought up this one, and then I did this one, and then I also did the ceiling one here. And the reason it's done that way is because it's a lot easier for you to be able to like to crisscross. So when I do the next coat, it'll be this side, it'll be this side, and it'll be this side. So you're not running around. And it makes a much easier, smoother transition. And the reason I picked to start the way I did is that I had actually forgot to do this flat somehow. And so I just did that flat. And because I knew if I started here, that my next corner up here would go here, I wouldn't cross this mud here of the flat that I just did. So that's just giving you guys a little bit of a insight as to how I run my corners and the reason I do it this way. These corners are going to take quite a while to dry. They hopefully will be dry tomorrow night when I get home from work and I can hit the other sides. But yep, that's how it's done. That's how I've always done it, and I think that's how most people do it, but just giving you a little bit of a tip. Let's get this butt joint second coated. One thing I like to do that I've been meaning to show earlier, but I just haven't been doing it, is it's a good idea to always scrape down your joint before you put a second coat on or a third coat. And what that will do is that will knock off anything that's high so it doesn't catch your knife and leave a high spot. It also can help expose air bubbles. So if there's some little air pockets that just are kind of covered, when you sand, those would get opened up. So if you knock them off now and open them up, you can fill them with this next coat. So just going to do that quick scrape. Nothing much. Take my knife, load it up. I come right down each side of this joint. Curl my knife, hit the edge. That's good for that side. Now I can come down and do this side. Same exact thing. When I'm done with this, I'll grab the camera and bring it closer so you can see, get a better idea of what it is I just did. This is what I consider the second coat of the butt joint. I don't consider the first taping coat an actual coat. And it'll be getting one more coat after this. The next coat, though, is a really tight coat. I don't leave a lot of mud. I pretty much cover the whole joint and then take it all right back off. That's it. Second coat on a butt. So you can see what I did here. Camera doesn't want to focus too good. There we go. Is I originally had just that center piece done, and that was just to get the tape covered. Now these other coats on the edges, These are to help feather it out so that it's not a big bump. It's a more gradual, just kind of slope. And once I give that its next tight coat, the sanding will be super minimal and you'll never see that joint. It'll be nice and smooth and not stand out. All right, that's it for that. Next, I'm going to second coat the corners that I showed you. And then we've got to second coat these flats. Then, final coat the butt joints, and we are done. Let's get started on the second coat on the corners, which is just the second side of the corners. You only put one coat on each side, but I showed you before how I do it in a pattern. First coat, now the second coat. And I'll tell you that this is probably one of my least favorite parts of mudding. It's probably the most difficult part to get right. Only if you care about how long it takes you to sand. If you don't care about sanding, which everybody should, then it's not a big deal. But you don't want to be spending a lot of time here, because if you have the mud up against the first coat that you did for very long, it's going to soften up that mud. And then as you're trying to get it perfect and you're spending too long there, you're going to start digging out the mud in the other corner. And that is going to start being chunks in the new side you're doing, plus you're leaving a groove into the other corner. So just a little something to keep in mind when you're doing this. You know, try to practice really good when you're doing your first side, so that when you come and do your second side, you can be quick about it, because this is the one spot where speed does count. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to scrape this corner down real quick. Make sure there's nothing too high here that's going to catch my knife and hang me up. Notice real gently. You don't want to be digging in or nothing. Gotta load up my knife real good. And I'm going to go ahead and put down a nice coat. Try to keep your knife heavily loaded towards the inside of the corner. Get your edge nice and flat. Do your final pass. Looks like I'm going to be doing one more final pass. Perfect. Now, like I said, that's about as much time as you really want to be spending on the inside of a corner. You don't want to be in there finagling it too much and trying to get your coat just right, because you're going to mess up the other side. And what I'm doing here is I don't spend a lot of time trying to make sure I'm, clean on the other side. I'll just take and clean that up like I just did. So that's a corner. I'm going to go ahead and do up the bottom. And that doesn't really have to be on film, but the next step, I think, will be the butt joints, the final coat, or it could be these joints, or maybe I'll probably show you the outside of those 45-degree angles that I started before. And we'll get the first coat on those. I'm not sure how many coats it's going to take yet. Like I said, I haven't used that before, but outside corners are usually at least a minimum of 2 coats. With regular metal corner bead, or even the plastic corner bead, it's 3 coats, but we'll see how this new stuff goes I'm trying out. Alright, I'm going to continue on. Alright, let's knock out this outside corner, this paper plastic corner bead stuff I showed you. Sorry, I know the lighting's terrible. I didn't feel like dragging out a light to shine at it, but I'll grab the camera and I'll bring it over closer when I'm done. I already did one side, super easy, just a 6-inch knife. I probably will hit this again with a 10-inch knife after. Not even going to show that because I've already shown enough about, spreading mud. It is what it is. But the 10-inch will probably be a pretty tight coat. It actually looks pretty good with just this one 6-inch knife coat. So you want to nicely load it right up. Just get a really good coat on there. Don't worry about it being messy to start with. And then I do the same thing I do on everything. I get this edge nice and tight. So I want to sand that off. And I come down, and this, you can basically stand your knife pretty much straight up because the corner of this is holding you out. So this corner is high relative to the wall, and so it holds you up really nicely. Just make sure you get that void totally full. Probably getting out of the camera a little bit here. Okay, so that's one side. And I take my knife and just flatten out the other side like that. I'm trying not to roll too much mud onto the side I just did, so I don't make a mess of it. And then once I have both sides done, take my knife like this, and I'll kind of run it across, pulling off the mud that I just knocked over to the other side. And if you get to it soon enough, you can also run your knife back down that side to get a nice clean corner. So that's basically all there is. Like I said, I'll put another coat over it with a 10-inch knife just to make sure it's nice and flat and even. The tape is covering really easy. Yeah, this stuff seems to work pretty good. So I'm going to finish this up, and then I'll walk the camera over and get you closer. Maybe you can see it a little bit better in the light. Okay, you can see the tape's all covered, and you still can't see anything in this light. Sorry. But you can see it's pretty thin, but it is covered, and when I get the wider knife, it'll be even better coverage here. So that's it, guys. That's those outside corners. Let's get this flat coated. Show you real quick. Like I said, it's always a good idea to scrape it down. Anything you're working with, always good to get a nice scrape. It's not really necessary, but it does help keep everything flat. So, load up my knife. Let's go. Unfortunately, I'm getting to the bottom of the bucket on this bucket I'm using, and that is causing some chunks did end up getting in there, even though, like I told you, some methods to reduce that. I still ended up with a couple chunks in my mud, but we'll get through it. So this coat is not going to take a long time to dry. It's not a really thick coat. This is the final coat. There was a tape coat. There was one coat that I started filling the void, and this is the final coat to fill the void. And you can almost pull your knife somewhat tight on this coat. Be a lot better if I didn't have those damn chunks in there. basically it. You're just doing a final fill on that void. Probably out of the camera a little bit here. That's it. Flat's done. I have a little area here where I had some chunks get in there I'm not crazy about. When that dries up, I'll just hit it again. It's easier to do that than it is to try to keep playing with it. That's the flat. Video's almost done, guys. We're moving on. If you're still watching, you guys are pretty patient. So, appreciate you watching. I want to show you guys something real quick. For one, that's that joint I just did. And you can see as it's drying, you know, it's not real thick. You know, it's going to dry just right. You know, that's that spot I was talking about, that when it's dry, I'll just skim coat that one little spot rather than trying to fix it. What I wanted to show you is that sometimes you make mistakes. Even though I have a good process and everything, sometimes on your butt joints, you give them a field test after your second coat, and you just check to see how good of a job did you do. Can you feel that, like a lump in the middle, right where the tape is? And in this case, I could feel a good lump here, and I wasn't happy with it. It wasn't good enough for me. And so basically I did a second coat. So you can see how I added to that to try to flatten that out. And then my next coat will still be the final coat, where I pull a nice tight skim coat over the entire thing. I just want to show you that just because you followed the process or whatever, make sure you still use common sense. You know, if you don't think it feels flat, put another coat on it. You know, don't mess around and do a crappy job because you want to stick to the way you were doing it. It's not uncommon on a butt joint. This is the everything I've been showing you, from the tape to the butt joints and everything, has been my first one that I've done on this job, which means it's the first time I've done any of it in like 2 years or so. So yeah, I'm a little bit rusty. You know, as I go, things get a little bit better, but yep, just want to show you that before we skim coat a butt joint, to show you that process, and then I think we'll be able to finish this up. All right, time to do a skim coat. So like always, make sure there's nothing for my knife to hang up on. You can see this flat is still wet, so I'm going to stop, you know, right around here. I'm not going to pull into that flat, and you won't need to. So what I'll do is I'll put a coat right on here. I'm actually going to cover the whole thing. The only main purpose for this coat is to make sanding a breeze. Like I've said a million times probably, the entire reason I do things the way I do them is I don't like sanding. I'll spend more time, a whole extra day if I have to, mudding, to not have to do hardly any sanding. I make my sanding really, really easy. There's some people these days that have, you know, they're using electric sanding equipment and all that. That all works great. I've always kind of questioned the quality of the work when you're able to do stuff that quickly, but that's not to say that the quality's not good. I just don't know. So I am basically pulling all this mud that I just put on right back off. I'm going to leave it at that. That looks pretty good to me. A little tiny edge there. Scrape that off, a little less sanding. Alright, now just a quick recap. This is the end of the video. No more watching me spread mud or talk about spreading mud, but I hope you guys learned something. So let's start off. The way I do it, my process, and there's no rhyme or reason to the sequence of the taping, but I'll tell you how I do it. So I do my butt joints all the way everywhere in the whole area that you're working. Then I tape all my flats. Then I tape all my vertical corners. Then I tape all my ceiling joints, corners. And then I'll put on my corner bead. After that, the sequence is not that critical on how you mud either, but you want to like not run mud into each other. So like I explained, you do the one coat down the center of a butt joint. Then I'll do, you can do corners after that, one side of all the corners. Like I said, how you can run them into each other and not mess them up. I'll hit the flat first coat. You can hit the other side of the corners after that. You can hit some of your corner bead. Another coat on the flats. Then your second coat on your butt joints. And your final coat on your butt joints. So like I said, none of that is that critical. The critical things I was really trying to get across in this video is limiting your edge. I've seen a lot of people that they don't know what they're doing with this, and their edge, they have like a 1/8 inch edge of mud on there, and sanding that off to try to make that smooth and feather that out, it's going to take you forever. And then even if you do, you're probably going to leave a big mound, because you might have sanded the edge down, but you didn't like get it flat, you just made it smooth, but it's a smooth mound. The way I try to do everything is, like I said, flat, make everything flat, no edges, make your sanding easy, because that's the part that no one wants to do. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you learned some things. I hope you understand also that, even though I've done this professionally in the past, 15 years ago, whatever it was, I am still rusty. I still know the process, and I know what I'm doing, but it is a knack. It's a knack. How you holding your knife and all that. You can lose it a little bit, but slower, but it's still just as good. So thanks for watching, guys. Please like, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. If you want to see follow-up videos, maybe after I sand it or how I sand it, I can show you that. If you want to see the painting process, installing the trim, how I go about caulking all the trim, filling the nail heads, painting everything, the sequence of doing all that, let me know. I don't know if there's any interest in that. I don't know if there's any interest in this video. This video is almost an hour long, so thanks.